Hold on.
Okay.
So,
Those are two figures. That's a little bit vague.
I see it.
But it's in the exact.
Okay, are you recording?
Yeah,
Okay, fine. So, from where you were, you could see what?
we could see the whole area. We could see the triple underpass. We could see the grassy knoll. We could see the book depository. We could see the records building, and we could see the building behind us. You know, it was all these places were the most logical place to put a sniper.
What happened then?
Well, we started trying to shut them down and secure the areas. So this area over here was supposed to be secure. The area up on top of the overpass.
What does that mean, secure the area?
Well, we know that there's no shooter there. There's no,
How was Sergio going about doing that?
Well, he was in communication with other people that had fanned out along the area and started closing in these areas. And I'm assuming that the rest of the team had already been there, and that's who was there. I don't even know that these guys on the plane was the actual guys in the plaza. All I know is that Sergio and I were there, and but the people that we brought in, I don't know that for sure if they were on that.
What
plaza.
kind of things was Sergio saying into his radio?
Well, okay, location. You know, are you at such and such? You know, is the Secret Service around? Is Dallas Police around? I mean, why hasn't this area been secure? Can't communicate, can't get. Who's over there? I think someone's over there. Where would you go if you were going to make a shot? You know, and this type of stuff, this type of conversation.
Sergio. So unless Sergio's a hell of an actor, you believe that he was part of a team that was trying to prevent this.
Trying to abort it. That's why I say that. I mean, I don't think it was a hit team that we took in there. And I mean, hindsight's always 100% on this thing. But at that point in time, we were there to try to snuff out anybody that would be doing triangulation crossfire. That's the reason that they hit. Evidently, the information that they had, or whoever had this information, or passed it on, was not concerned about one person. They were concerned about many people.
Okay. Kennedy's car comes in view. Give us a play-by-play from your perspective.
Well, we're over here on the south.
Well, I can't see that, so just talk to me.
So we're over here on the south knoll, and when earlier we'd had a little ruckus over around the Texas school, and I'm just going to go what I remember, not get into any theories and stuff. There was some kind of commotion over around the school book depository on the ground just a few minutes before the limousine come into view. All right, what I remember is the limousine come around and come into view right through there. We're sitting here, trying to, thinking everything is basically all right.
Yeah, look at me.
Okay, and then all hell broke loose.
What happened?
Then when the shots happened and when I saw it and sit there and watched it, knew that it was bad. Also recall thinking that a shot came over my head from back behind the records building or the train station or wherever the terminal is around there. And also the front of the grassy knoll. Because as we were running, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. At that point in time, when that happened, Sergio's first words were, "Oh my God, we fucked up. And then let's get the hell out of here." And that's when we beat it. So we're looking at just a few minutes, a few seconds before we're like heading out, not running, heading out from this area over to the overpass. And at that point, we knew that it was a hit. What all went through my mind at that point was, I mean, I don't really know to this day how to describe it.
Try.
Numbness, a certain amount of shock, but then survival. How the hell to get out of here? Because then the realization comes in that this could be some serious stuff. And if we're caught, I didn't think in terms that we would be labeled as the assassins if we were caught, because we were sanctioned. We were protected. But the object is that obviously we failed in that particular mission. I say the whole group, failed in that particular mission.
Okay,
to abort the assassination.
So the shots happen. You see that could you see the president being hit?
So I can go back, and so I can go forward.
Uh-huh.
And there was no doubt in my mind that he was dead at that point. I mean, the sound, now I'm giving you my experiences. The sound of the shots, the echo of the shots, the power of the rifle, the fact that I still to this day think there was 3 or 4 shots, you know, from different areas. That's just my first impressions. But then it was obvious we had to get the hell out of there.
Then tell me what happened.
Then we went over the tracks, across the tracks, slid down the backside of the deal and over here. Okay, anyway, on the backside of the railroad tracks, the triple underpass, Sergio and I went over. Sergio got his pants wet and muddy because he fell down the side of the embankment. And then a car was in that area to take us back out to a safe house. And we went to Ed McLemore Sportatorium where Sergio changed clothes.
Hold on. Just you and Sergio get in the car.
Just me and Sergio.
By the way, I forgot to ask you how you got to Dealey Plaza.
We came down in a car.
Same car that took you back?
I'm not sure if it's the same car.
Okay. All right, so you and Sergio get in the car, and you drive where?
We go from there, make a U-turn out, and go back to stop off at Ed McLemore Sportatorium.
What's that?
That's a wrestling place in Dallas.
Yeah.
They had, you know, it wasn't no figure in this. It was just a place that we stopped, and he changed clothes. And his clothes in the car, and his clothes, you know, for whatever getaway clothes or whatever you want to call it that. And that's where he changed clothes there. And then from there we went from there.
Anybody see you there?
There were some people there, you know, but I don't think anybody. It was around the backside of the Ed McLemore Sport.
Why didn't he just change clothes in the car?
I have no idea. We stopped there, you know, and
he had his clothes with him.
There was clothes in the car already.
But he stopped there to change.
Stopped there to change.
Okay. Right. He gets out, changes clothes, gets right back in. Was it fast? Did he?
Basically, yeah. From what I remember,
You're sitting in the car?
I'm more concerned about what happened at the plaza at that point, because we're only looking at less than probably 5 minutes.
Right.
So I'm not really observing exactly what he did, or if he talked to anybody there, or if it was a stage stop place or a drop place or what.
Okay.
I to this day, what I know is that my mind was someplace else, not exactly what was going on at Ed McLemore Sportatorium.
You know who your driver was?
No, I don't know.
Okay. What happened? He gets back in the car. You go to Garland?
We go to we go out to Redbird Airport to a safe place on Harbor Drive. This was a safe house out near Redbird Airport, and that's where we went back to.
And then what happened?
And then we went back out, well, just through there, and then out to the airport, and got, we were supposed to pick up 2 other people, and they didn't show up. And by 2:30, I think we were airborne.
With whom? With who in the plane?
Rosselli didn't come back on. Gator didn't come back on.
Rojas?
And, Rojas was there.
Who else?
And one other guy, I believe.
You remember who?
Rosselli, no. Rosselli did not come back.
Did not
come back.
You remember the conversation?
We were supposed to pick up somebody else out of Dallas. Now, I'm assuming to this day it was supposed to, perhaps would have been Lee Harvey Oswald. But
why do you say that?
Well, I feel that we were supposed to pick up somebody else and bring people out of Dallas. That why I feel that, I'm not real sure.
So you and Rojas and Sergio and one other person was on that plane going back.
Right.
Was it one of the persons who you took in, or a different person?
No, I think it was a different person. We went through. Did we go through that on a tape once? We tried to get out. We tried to. There was 2. What I remember about that, there was 2 people supposed to come out, but they didn't show up. It was a mess up from the word go.
Okay.
We even waited a little bit.
What is the talk on the plane? You're flying where, to New Orleans now?
It wasn't. No. We're going back. We were supposed to go to Shepherd Air Force Base, but we didn't. We went south instead, and we went back to Houston. And we were supposed to meet somebody in Houston. They were supposed to meet somebody in Houston. And so we went back to Houston, and then eventually disbanded and went back to New Orleans, and then back to Loxahatchee.
What was the talk on the plane going to Houston?
There wasn't a lot of talk. There wasn't any excitement. There wasn't. It was a very gloomy situation.
Were you in a kind of state of shock, or?
Confusion more than shock, and I wasn't the only one. Everybody was sort of confused. It wasn't a deal where we were very happy about the situation. Because we, even without being told, we knew that the president was dead. You know, and they knew more about this than what I knew. And there's no doubt in my mind, you know, about what they knew.
They? Who's
The
they?
people that we were taking back to Houston.
Well, you said that it was just one person and you don't remember his name.
Well, no, there was other people that went back.
I'm confused, Tosh. You get on the plane.
There were other people at the safe house.
Right.
And then when we left Garland, some of those people and some of the people in the plaza came back out to the area. The two people that we were supposed to pick up did not show up. So going out, we had about 3 or 4 people on there, and a couple of them were from the safe house.
And you didn't know who they were?
Didn't know who they were.
Okay.
Didn't really care, you know, at that particular point.
Right.
You know.
Okay, so you go to Houston. You get off or you stay on?
I stay on.
And then where do you go?
And then we go to back to New Orleans.
Who? You, Sergio?
Rojas, Sergio, and myself. I can't remember if Gator was back on board or not. But and then we take a D-18. We drop the DC-3 and take the D-18. We've blown Steve Guthrie and took it back to Lantana, I think it was.
Wait a second, Gus. You told me yesterday that Tosh was held by the FBI for 6 hours.
In one account, weren't you held in New Orleans?
In New Orleans, yeah, we were stopped. When we got back to New Orleans before we went in, it says on one of those articles that I was detained. That did not come from me. That came from the FBI, and that is a bald-faced lie, and the documents and the records prove it. In other words, we were detained, but we were not detained for any 2 or 3 hours. We were talked to, which I considered a debriefing in New Orleans by the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
You were? Tell me
Yes.
about that.
We were stopped
How?
in New Orleans
At the airport?
at the airport. And
Who?
we were not detained. We were asked questions, like
Where did they take you?
Our flight plan. They didn't take us any place. Right there at the airport.
In the plane?
Right. Yeah, at the hangar there at I think it was L.B. Smith Aircraft Corporation.
The FBI stopped you.
People that presented themselves to be FBI talked to us.
They showed you identification?
That's nothing. You know, that's nothing. You know, where the FBI or whatever.
They tell you
Nothing. Nothing.
They didn't tell you their names.
Didn't go into any detail at all, other than detained us. That all came about from an article, and it also came about when someone else had told a researcher that was writing an article about being stopped and locked up in New Orleans. You know, that wasn't the case at all.
Okay, well, tell me what did happen. You land in New Orleans, and people from the FBI who say they're from the FBI approach the plane.
Approach us in the not the aircraft, but inside the hangar.
Right.
Like refueling and changing aircraft.
Right, and then what
Dropping
happened?
The DC-3. That, like, what was your flight plan? Where did you come from? What were what are you up to, or what were you up to, or what were you doing? You know, where did you just come from?
What did you tell him?
Like that. I didn't tell him anything. Rojas did most of the talking, and
What did he say?
I don't know what he said. You know, there was conversation there, and that was the extent of it.
I mean, did he say anything about the assassination
He's the
aboard?
guy that told me that they were the FBI.
Were you in the room when he was talking to them?
Well, yeah, in the area.
In the area, but I mean, did Rojas tell him anything about the assassination aboard squad?
No, nothing like that. I mean, it wouldn't be. I mean, that was an area that we would never talk about to anybody.
So he just painted an innocent picture. You were,
I guess.
Uh-huh.
You know, as far as I can determine, what he told them would be, we were just there.
you don't remember you don't remember the FBI agents, any of the names? Did they use names? You don't remember any of that?
Well, yeah, there's names, and I remember some of them. You know, but
Who?
Well, let's see. We've got that on the tape. No, Pete does. We went all through that. McGaff, or something like that, was one of the agents. Chuck Middleton was one of the agents. That's the name that they used, you know. And that's about all I know about that.
Okay, so you were debriefed by the FBI.
No, not debriefed by the FBI.
Questioned.
We were stopped to be detained, and then we were let go. That's my impression.
How long did they detain you?
Probably 3 or 4 hours.
And Rojas was doing all of the talking.
Most of it, yeah.
They never.
And Dwayne Cheshauer, who came back with us, was doing most of the
Oh,
talking.
Cheshauer was on the
Cheshauer
plane.
came back with us,
Where did he get on the plane?
back in Garland.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, he got off the plane in
Yeah,
Garland.
he was in and out. I thought I clarified that. He came. Yeah, he got out in Garland and got back on to Redbird and came out. But he and Rojas were doing most of the talking to the Fed people in New Orleans.
Did you on the flight back from Redbird? Did Cheshauer say anything about what he'd seen? Do you know where he went?
No, I have no idea. I wasn't about to ask.
You guys didn't talk to each other about stuff like that.
And all that, and the whole mood, like I say, the whole mood changed. You know, it was not a very talkative situation at that point. It's one of those things that you just put your head down in the cockpit and do your job.
There was no elation on Cheshauer's.
No, not that. If anything, it was the opposite.
Okay, so which is why you believe one of the reasons you believe that they really were there to
at that
abort.
point in time, I think that they failed in their mission, and so that was the reason that there would be no rejoicing or whatever. You know.
Why would? Well, let me just finish and then I'll backtrack. So the FBI is through with you. You get back on the plane. You go to.
We go back to Tampa and Lantana, and then eventually back to Loxahatchee.
And just resume your life.
Right, and then resume my life. Shortly after that, I was detained, and I was taken back to Denver, Colorado for no account check charge at the cost of over $2,000 and something at that time, $25,000, and put in jail at Denver County Jail for 3 months.
How did this happen? What happened?
They came and picked me up at Loxahatchee.
Who's they?
Denver authorities.
Yeah.
And extradited me to Denver, Colorado to stand charges for a no-account check.
You mean for a check that you bounced?
Well, now see, this is where we're getting into a long, drawn-out area. There was no check, and there was no bounce, and there's FBI documents to substantiate that. But however, the record also shows that I was extradited from Florida chain gang deal at Loxahatchee to Denver, Colorado, and I stayed 3 months in jail, in Denver County Jail, and ended up being sentenced by a judge to an indeterminate stay in the state reformatory, all through the Warren Commission.
What you're saying is that they wanted you out of the way.
Now, what I'm saying is they got me out of the way.
What about, do you know what happened to Rojas? Do you know what happened to Sergio?
During those years, all these years, I had no idea of what's happened to those people. That was a real touchy situation.
How?
And I sort of made a little bit of an agreement to sort of sit down and keep my mouth shut. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here today.
How quickly were you picked up?
Immediately.
After you got back to where? What?
Immediately. As soon as I got back to Loxahatchee, I went into solitary confinement.
Bang.
Bang, overnight, and 2 days later, the Denver Police Department's guy is there to pick me up, and I'm extradited out.
Are there?
Within, that was November the 23rd, 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th. By December 1st or 8th, I'm back in lockup in Denver County Jail with no charges. Well, charges, but I stayed there for 90-something days before I ever saw a judge.
Are there documents?
Yes, there are. I have some down in my briefcase.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah,
so you can account for that.
Yeah.
Who picked you up at Is it Loxahatchee?
Loxahatchee. Right.
In Florida.
In Florida.
Who picked you up?
I've got the extradition papers that's of the officer that flew down here to pick me up, and he's still in Denver. I mean,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but where he remembers the incident and what he was just a guy to pick up. I don't know. But as far as an investigation, as this thing goes on, there's a lot of that area that can substantiate what I'm saying from court records.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a new story. In '64, there's a probationary report where I'm talking about this operation, and they're flat telling me to shut up, and I'm crazy, and I'm fabricating, and I'm not reliable.
Is there a transcript?
A probationary report says all kinds of derogatory things about me, that I have an IQ of 84 and I've passed top checks all over the country. I've also got documents where no checks were ever produced, and the National Check Fraud File, nothing could ever be found on me.
So they just wanted what you believe is that they wanted to put you on ice until the Warren Commission finished its
That's
report.
what I believe.
Did the Warren Commission ever talk to? Obviously, it didn't talk to you. Did it ever talk to Rojas, to Sergio, to Roselli?
None of these names ever came out. I never talked to any of these people. Very adamant. I never went through debriefing with these people about this. This story was never told at that time. The Sergio, the hit team, the abort story, me even being in the plaza on that day, I have never, over the years, ever admitted that I was there in the plaza, till just recently. And
How come?
and also about the abort theory. There was one time when the House Select Committee was being formed that I tried to come out and make contact, and I ended up getting a pretty good bloody nose because of that. But I did talk to Fensterwall about it, not about this particular situation, but about my activities on behalf of the Cuban rebels, and also about the assassination. And, a long time ago, 1981.
Tosh, why have you decided to go public with this now?
Because of the Contra thing. In other words, the whole deal with me and the Kennedy thing is, everybody knows I have stayed away from this Kennedy thing purposely for many, many years. At one point I was going to write a book called The Black Knights of Cuba, but it didn't have a lot to do with the Kennedy thing. It had a lot to do with black crew operations. That got completely out of hand. As a result of that, I had a house fire. Thing was burned down, documents were taken, so on like that. So I shut up about all this. I kept my mouth shut. I didn't say anything. I just, didn't get involved in the research circles. Now, the thing that brought this up was I was involved in the Contra Resupply Network before Contra Resupply Network ever come up. I was running guns again. History repeats itself. Out of Mexico into Latin America and all this. I had worked through a senator and was trying to get a Senate investigation to look into what we were involved with in Central America in 1983. So all this stuff was documented before the fact, before Contra ever come on the scene. And as a result of that, I ended up being asked to come back and testify to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. In testifying on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, there's no way that I could establish my credibility without going into my past connections. And that led to Cuba, and that led to Kennedy. So then as the mood of things start changing around over the country, special interest groups and people that profiteer off dead people, I don't like. So I could see the same thing happening in Contra. So as a result of that, talking to a few key people around and good researchers, I decided to get back involved and tell this story. I mean, so this is not a story of me trying to tell for publicity or for some great book or to get publicity for a book. The reason that I'm involved in the Kennedy thing is because I lived it. And I cannot establish my credibility in the military end of intelligence as far as the Contra deal without coming back into my past. Now, a lot of this has been confirmed. The documents, the 105 documents on the gun running operations, the fact that in 1959, John Martino, everybody says the Watergate guys popped up in the 70s. He's all over 105 file documents that I have back in 1959. Larry Allen, Wood, Hank Wood, all these CIA people that came out over the years to be connected with the CIA are smashed all over my 105 gun running documents.
And do we have, Gus, copies of some of those documents?
We have some of them, yeah.
Okay.
We got about that much documents, right, Jim? And that's just a third of them, and those are FBI documents. And in those, that you'd have to just sit and go through, and you can see the conflict in these documents. That's what I was telling you. It alludes to the gun running operations. It alludes to the Ruby operations of gun running. It goes to the Havana situation, the Alpha 66 movements, the book here, the Flying, which is done by Hinkle and Turner. I don't know if you've seen this.
No.
Okay, see this, and over the years, people start writing about operations that I was involved with, and that sort of upsets you a little bit. Things are not held in confidence if you start talking about operation, I'm not talking about the Kennedy thing, but the Polly expedition to remove missile technicians out of Cuba, to take Bio out of Cuba, to pay ransom for Barkeen's release, the United Fruit situation. All this stuff is background on me and operations that I was involved with, which are documented.
I want to ask you a question. Could you explain to me why Johnny Roselli, who was a mob guy, would have been part of an assassination abort squad?
I can't explain that. There's no way that I can explain that. I don't know. But my point of view is that he was part of the abort. But see, Roselli, I used to fly Roselli all over this country. This is, even into Cuba and out of Cuba. So I was John Roselli's personal pilot for a while.
And at that time, pardon me for interrupting, you did not know he was a mobster, did you?
No, I did not know he
You
was
only knew him as
organized
Colonel
crime.
Roselli.
Right, he was referred to me as Colonel Roselli.
When did you find out that he was?
A couple of months after I started, Dave Farrell, we lived at the Green Mansions together, right out here right across from Eastern Airlines. So all this group was already established long before the Kennedy assassination.
Did you know David Ferry?
Yes, I did. I lived with him for 6 months.
When did you? Ferry.
That was in the early
Ferry was
60s.
Oswald's flight instructor briefly when he was Oswald was 15, right?
Right.
And what else? Ferry's connection to the assassination in brief was what?
Basically, there was a rumor that Garrison got that Oswald was arrested with David Ferry's library card. So Garrison looked into that in New Orleans. He found David Ferry, questioned him. Ferry never admitted to knowing Oswald or anything. However, witnesses have surfaced in Clinton, Louisiana, showing that Oswald and Ferry were working together, and 24 witnesses to say that they were working together with Bannister.
Yes, Delphine Roberts, that was a
Tracy
Bannister
Barnes.
secretary, places Ferry and Oswald working for Bannister at the same time in the summer of '63.
Yeah. Now this has been pretty well documented through research, over the years.
You and Ferry ever talk about Oswald?
No, no reason to.
Ferry was just another guy doing what you did, right?
Yes, exactly. I even think to some degree he had military intelligence contacts. I won't say that he was an operative. I don't know. I don't really know. But the bit about, he was a funny guy. Worked for Eastern Airlines. Knew a lot of the mafia-controlled people in this area. Now, at that point in time, I didn't know that, but I'm saying, over the years, that's obviously been proven.
What name did Oswald know you by?
Mainly William Pearson, I think, but he also probably knew my real name.
Why Pearson?
I used William H. Pearson as an operative. Juan Cabral. There's a whole list of my FBI files. I can't remember them all. Jay Payne, Bob Bennett, Robert J. Payne, Payne. That's why I say it's so complicated to try to trace people out, because number one, what kind of name have you got? I worked under, like I said, probably over 19 different names at one time or another.
What's KENCOM?
Okay, that's all right. KENCOM was Kennedy's top secret special committee. It was only known by, probably not more than 50 to 70 people was involved in the knowledge of that. And that was set up primarily to gather the intelligence out of the Caribbean or Latin America, because Kennedy was not getting the right information back out of the Caribbean. As a result, the Kennedy brothers, Bobby and them, set up a little bit of a ploy, and it became known as KENCOM, and the military intelligence was through the NSC or whatever was passing the information back to the Kennedy brothers about what was really going on as far as operations in Latin America.
Did you know this at the time?
Yes, I knew that at the time. I knew that there was a special committee formed to look into the intelligence because the intelligence, there was a war going on in those days between military intelligence, ONI, and different Eisenhower loyalists against the Kennedy people that was coming in. The shift of the change up, it was a total mess. And as a result of that, that was the reason that this committee was formed. Now, the name KenCom, I think, has been over the years, just made reference to in certain documents as Kennedy's committee, to look into that, because all through those writings, there's all kinds of indications of a top secret operation that was controlled by Kennedy to look into certain things. It's all through this book it's alluded to.
What's that book?
This is The Fish's Red.
Which is?
A book that was written about the secret war against Castro.
Hinkle and Turner.
Hinkle and Turner, I appeared in this book in 4 different places, and I didn't know it was written about. That's one.
Using your real name?
Using my real name.
Uh-huh.
They interviewed me. What happened on this, and this goes back to KenCom. There was information that came out back in this era about removing missile technicians out of Cuba, about a secret war financed by a multimillionaire, and an ambassador was involved. And anyway, this came out and hit the AP press. And I'm sitting in Phoenix, Arizona one time, and I pick up this paper, and I'd like to crack. Because here it is, the whole Flying Tiger episode coming out in the AP and UPI press deal. So as a result of that, I contacted these people.
Okay.
There's a lot of copies of different, things. Okay.
Rolling.
All right, where were we?
Well, we were going into this because the reason I brought this along, there's a lot of references in here made to KenCom. I would get this book if I were you,
Okay.
And or Gus has got some copies. But anyway, as a result of this, because of the Poly expedition, removing missile technicians out of Cuba, the ransom release for Bio and all that, all this was involved around KenCom. The file locator number at one time on that, the information I had was like an OMC 235 QC2, but researchers have been going into this, they can't find anything, and in reference to that or whatever. I don't think you're ever going to find any direct reference to KenCom per se, other than the people that was involved in those operations. So what I'm saying about KenCom, that was Kennedy's top secret committee, which is limited to a very few people of his echelon, that had black crew operatives working for him or for that operation. And they in turn would gather the information and try to assimilate it back to get to the Kennedys so that they could make policy or whatever. Because the information coming from basically, quote, quote, the old diehards, the old SS, the old guys from Wild Bill, Harvey, and Donovan operations of CIA were not giving the proper information to the to the new president of the United States, basically because they were loyal to Eisenhower or whatever. So there was a war within the area. Military ONI was fighting with military intelligence. The political arena of it at that particular time was Eisenhower loyalists were hoodwinking and putting out erroneous information on certain Cuban movements, and and it was fabricated. It was lies, some of it.
How did you personally feel about John Kennedy?
I thought he was, but personally, I think he made a lot of big mistakes with the Cubans. But personally, I think he's the only leader, that could have done. He tried to do something.
I mean, at the time, not now. How did you feel at the time?
I felt good about him at the time. I had no qualms. And when McCone come on the scene, I had no qualms with that. John McCone was in charge of CIA around that time. I had no qualms at all. I felt good about Kennedy. I felt that he was really trying to, get things done. He was making changes. It was, even in that time, with what was going on as far as organized crime and Bobby Kennedy and the Cuban situation and the Castro situation, it was no surprise to me that he got killed. No surprise at all.
Because?
Because of what he was trying to do. Because of the secret committees. Because of what we were doing, how we were operating. information that we were passing back. One of the biggest things that we had to fight down there was, to make it sound simple, was what I call Eisenhower loyalties. People that were loyal to the Eisenhower. I'm talking about the suits, not necessarily the operatives, but the suits. They got completely out of control of erroneous information, getting people killed.
Do you mind if I ask one,
No, please.
one question? During that period of time, in the groups that you were circulating through, did you personally ever overhear any kind of talk about that could be construed to be threats against Kennedy? Like, boy, we need to get rid of this guy, or he's a problem.
Only from in the Arizona bit. There's another deal about a gun running operation in '63, April, and there's documents to that. From the Caravan Inn and the Thunderbird Inn in Las Vegas and the Caravan Inn in Phoenix, Arizona. And to the effect that from the Marcello and from the Marchese and the Joe Bonanos family, which was actually friends of Eugene Checker Smaldone out of Denver, Colorado, that the only reflection to answer your question was that if he's not careful, he's going to get his ass snuffed, And
Right.
that was in probably, I'd say, April of '63.
So that was from mob
And that was
connection
from
sources.
directly mob connection. Now, see, I had
What about the Cubans?
nothing directly from the Cubans, that I can remember.
Well, could you
You know.
clarify that when David Scott Farrell gave you the briefing to go to Dallas, he represented himself as representing CENTCOM, that he was coming from the White House?
This was, he didn't have to represent himself. I mean, at that point in time, we knew all these operations were CENTCOM. I mean, because we're in Loxahatchee. This is a safe place. So, and this is after Kennedy had came in. This CENTCOM had already been formed all the way back prior to the Bay of Pigs, even '61. So CENTCOM was not a new operation.
So you were of the impression that this mission was coming from the White House?
From the White House.
The
exactly.
assassination abort squad?
The abort squad.
Who is David Scott Farrell?
He was the contact in Loxahatchee with John McMahon or Mahan. Yeah, McMahon.
Did David Scott Farrell?
He was a floater. He was like, I think David Scott Farrell was a lot like Bob Owens in the Contra situation, if that's any analogy.
Did Farrell tell you that you were flying to Dallas on an assassination abort mission?
Yes.
Where is Farrell now? Do we know?
No.
Was that his real name?
We don't know. I don't know.
Don't know. We haven't gone anywhere with it
I
yet.
went up to William H. Pearson.
And he went under the name David Scott Farrell,
Right.
which
And
may or may not have been his
Bob
real
Bennett
name.
and Maurice Bishop and all these are not real names. This is why I've said all these years, it is the most Pandora's box of worms to try to trace out who is who, because I worked with guys that I would know as good friends and went out and, pardon the expression, played around a lot with the ladies and things. I never knew their real names, and they never knew mine.
Was Sergio's name his real name?
Well, obviously, yes. So
Yeah.
The Cubans are, this is amazing. The Cubans, for some strange reason, never went by a lot of operative names, if you stop and think about that.
Was Rojas, was that his real
That's
name?
his real name.
We have any sense of where to find him?
No.
We know his first name?
Yeah, that's
What?
Rojas.
No, his first name.
Well, there's a lot of things. Diaz is his last name. Rojas Diaz. There's a name that I talked to you about the other day. You asked me
That's about Sergio. I was asking you. Sergio Diaz Lance.
Diaz Lance, yeah. Sergio Ramon Sacaras.
Sergio was his first name?
No, not Rojas. I was thinking that we had talked about Rojas before, but that was Sergio.
We were talking
We
Sergio
talked
before.
Okay, so Rojas is. I've got some other names that I've put out. To myself over the years, but I'm not real sure. But
We don't know where Rojas lives,
Yeah, no.
whether even he's
we don't even know if you don't even know if Rojas exists. I don't. After all this, I'm getting to the point where I don't even know if Rojas existed, and I flew with him for many, many, many times.
Well, he was real.
Yeah, he was real, right? But
In your opinion,
little boy there.
in your opinion, if there was funding to go after these guys, do you think there's enough clues that these guys could be found?
That's the whole reason I stepped into this thing. The only thing that people like me can do and others is point investigators in a direction to go. You know, I have spent a lot of money on phone calls and a lot of money in the last year trying to trace out some of these people, and Jim went with me on a trip, and we got a lot of good leads out of Marathon Key on other operations. And that is the only way that you can get in to find these people, is that you've got to know what you're talking about. You've got to be pointed in a particular direction, like the Cocoa Plum incident, and pull these guys back together and like Gerry Hemming and Ray Hargos, not that they play a part in the Kennedy deal, but there's a whole family out there. And all we can do is point investigators in a direction to go to get the documents. There's no way that I can get those documents. You know, they exist. You know, we already in the last year have already touched on some areas that have made some pretty good inroads.
What do you think the chances are if we went to Puerto Rico or somebody went to Puerto Rico, they could find Sergio?
Well, you can find him. You know, the best way to do that would be go through the Cuban. The reason we came down last February was to go through the Cuban community and let these people come out to you. But if you're going in an official federal capacity or a journalist, you know, investigative capacity and hit these people, with the Cuban community, you're going to get stonewalled.
Sergio was Cuban.
Yes.
You said that you talked to him on the phone?
Just recently.
How did that happen? He call you, you call him?
No, well, I told you about the Watts incident.
Right.
Well, then after that, there was a letter. Someone wrote a letter to some people down here. I was down here poking around trying to get as much information as I could to try to locate these people, because we were going to do a book, you know, or do something, maybe. And so that's when I came down here, talked to Tony Vinciano, and I had a hard time getting in touch with him because he didn't want to get involved in this stuff. But anyway, I went over and had a meeting with him, went over and had a meeting with Alpha 66, set the word, even Jim was with me, and set the word to Alpha 66 that we're not here to cause any trouble or to create any waves in the Cuban community, and what we were attempting to do. We wanted to locate Joe Westbrook, some of these people that were involved in these operations, and some of the people that was involved in CENTCOM. Hopefully, hoping that they would come forward and we could go out and get affidavits from them that would substantiate this particular story. We made good inroads. In fact, the word come back that they would help in any way that they could. And then a letter went out. And the letter, someone wrote a letter, a researcher wrote a particular letter, sent it back down here, telling these Cubans what they will do and how soon they will do it.
Did Sergio call you?
I got he called me and that 989 number that I had in Denver, and very pissed off.
So you don't have a number for him?
No, I don't have a number for him.
Except we know where he is.
But I'll tell you one thing, now I'm going to hedge here. I am not a spotter to go out here and put other people. In other words, I can only point a direction.
I understand.
I just want to understand.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I'm not this. I've already just went through one of these deals of someone telling me what I am going to do and how I am going to get these people to talk to this individual. You know, very adamant about what I am going to do. You tell him I want to talk to him. And then this individual wrote letters out to these people. And I went in good faith and started opening up a little bit about some of these connections here in Miami, and even come down here to Miami after over 20 years and got a receptive rather well, wouldn't you say, Jim, in the Cuban community. Only a few months later, which I think I told you, Gus, that I almost got my throat cut over because of what someone else did. That is not very naive about how you approach these people, and what you talk about and what you bring up, and how it will be done on their terms. If Sergio wants to come forward, he will come forward. But Sergio and these other guys will not come forward until they really finally, and these Cuban people will not come forward until they know that whoever's doing a documentary or whoever's writing a book is doing it on truth and not on propaganda or making money or to sell a bunch of books off dead people.
One last question, and then I think we've got it. I was shown a document that was the manifest from your flight to Dallas, right? with the people on it?
Yes.
You got that document, didn't you?
Yeah, I haven't. Is that the one that
I'll
you
have it
sent
with
me?
me. You sent it to me.
Okay. Is that the one of the summation of?
No.
The recap?
The flight plan page that you sent.
Oh,
me?
the flight plan. Okay. Yeah, I know where you're at. There's two flight plans. Number one, don't take any stock in one of them, or the one that came out of the Peter Boyle's
the battery
article.
light's on.
Okay, stop it.
In August of 1981, I give Bernard Finsterwald Jr. permission to go into my Freedom of Information file. As a result of that, within 2 weeks, and he has a letter to this effect, suddenly the FBI released all their 105 files that they had on me. In that 105 file was a flight plan that was dated, there's two flight plans. One of them was dated April of 1963, and that was a gun running operation and bringing some people and dropping them off in New Mexico. At the same time, there was a page of one that came in that had names written on it, like Sergio and Oswald and things like this on that flight plan. They came through Freedom of Information. And I was asked about that, and I said, it's that particular flight plan I wouldn't trust. It's a plant. You know, that's not my handwriting on that particular flight plan with Oswald and or whatever. I don't remember what's on that flight plan. Do you have a copy of that?
Not with me, but it's you had
It's the back page.
Raven, Hawk, Roselli.
Yeah, it's the back page of a flight plan. It's not the front page. The front page is dated in April of 1963, and the aircraft number is 6393 Echo. That ties in with the 172 that was abandoned on the ranch at McCord's Ranch in New Mexico. There's a little story here. Okay, but now as far as the flight plan, those names, I wouldn't trust that flight plan. What I'm saying is that is not my flight plan.
The one you showed me, Gus, is that the one he says he wouldn't trust?
Right. Yeah.
Didn't it have a date on it?
Somebody wrote a date on it. Yeah.
And the date was what?
November 19th, 1963.
Yeah.
Right, because see, we had no flight plans. We did not file a flight plan on the day of the assassination.
This is what they got from the
So when the FBI sent out a dossier with those three flight plans, hey man, what I'm thinking is that it was a setup to discredit myself. If I let researchers go with that flight plan, you know how I do on this, Jim. Then how do I know there wasn't something out there to come back and shoot that down?
We don't.
No.
That's the flight plan that you showed me that
Right.
you said was evidence that this had happened.
It purports to be evidence that
It
it happened.
reports
Yeah.
to be evidence that happened.
And it came from the FBI.
But I could have just been numb on this, but it came from the FBI, and I don't like that because that is not.
Even though some,
Why would they have that flight plan?
Is it possible
I do
Rojas
not.
filed it?
Huh?
Is it possible Rojas filed it?
It's possible, but I strongly doubt that. And then the Peter Boyle's article that come out over that flight plan. I mean, it's just something over that particular flight plan. Someone was reaching for a flight plan, and I'm saying my recollection is that if there was no flight plan filed, so how could they come up with a flight plan? Now there was a flight plan in April of 1963 over an aircraft that was abandoned in New Mexico. What I was trying to say, the back side of that flight plan that you have, that I sent you, and also you have too, Jim, you know, that's the back side of the front of the April 1963 flight plan. Does that make sense to
yeah,
you?
but what, Gus? I'm sorry you didn't bring the thing, but the document that you showed me was dated November 19th or November 20th,
Right.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it had Roselli's name on it and some other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Code names Hawk, Raven,
Yeah.
Sparrow.
Okay.
Now,
Well, see, what I'm saying is that
1 second, please.
Let's stop it. I think. Yes? Okay. Just brief background on you. Gerry, around the time of the Kennedy assassination, what were you doing? What were you up to?
At the time of the assassination, myself and some of the individuals working as paramilitary instructors to the Cuban exiles had just returned from a search and rescue mission in Guatemala. And
Under whose employ were you?
we were freelancers, considered freelancers at the time, although I, as an individual, maintained contact with General Gaynor and other people in the security research staff of the Office of Security for the Central Intelligence Agency. I was never a intelligence officer nor a direct employee of the agency.
Who was paying your freight?
When there was something that came up, it was through cutouts, third parties, any money that was necessary. I was not in a reporting position. I'd gone to Cuba earlier, had made contact with Castro's people, and operating as what they call a singleton. You don't have a case officer, you don't report, you're just in there in a long-term basis seeing what is going on. At that point in time, they were much interested in Castro's connections, using me as a bridge to bring in more professional and older people to have liaison with Castro's people in the opposition in 1959.
Well, what are you doing today, by the way?
I'm a legal assistant, and I'm working on a variety of drug trafficking cases, other types of cases in both the state and federal courts.
And you're working for whom?
I work for numerous law firms and individual attorneys and or the clients themselves, who I in turn hire attorneys for and do most of the paperwork that is called motion practice, so that the attorneys have a minimum amount of time on their feet in court if there's going to be a trial. It's a to-the-point issue. I do most of the investigative research and legal research and preparation of paperwork pleadings.
Would you agree that one of the keys, if not the key, to the assassination is Lee Harvey Oswald and who he was?
Exactly.
You met him, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
When?
1959 in the first week of January in Los Angeles.
Tell me about that. What were you doing? What was he doing? What were the circumstances?
I was liaison from a Mexico group that were supplying arms to Castro's and other independent of Castro guerrilla organizations, had returned from Mexico, and
was Castro in power yet?
This is just at a point in time where Batista was leaving, but Castro was not in power. He didn't arrive in Havana until January the 8th.
Mm-hmm.
I arrived back from Mexico for New Year's and was in contact with the 26th of July representatives for the Los Angeles, Southern California area immediately.
What's the 26th of July?
This was Castro's organization. It's a date-type organization, a la the Colombians' M19. It records the assault on the Moncada barracks in Santiago de Cuba, July the 26th, 1953.
Okay.
So while liaisoning with the 26th of July people who were under severe FBI and other types of surveillance, they made a move to occupy what was considered the Consul General's office and establishment in the Southern California area, which would rate as a, not an embassy, but as a consular establishment located in a private residence in Monterey Park, California. And my family lived near there, so it wasn't much of a trek to get back and forth. The former Batista representative, consular official, lived at the residence, and he was confronted with these armed 26th of July representatives who then occupied the residence, which is considered foreign territory and is under diplomatic protection. And an announcement was made immediately that in the name of the new Cuban revolutionary government, these individuals had taken over the residence. As a reaction to that, the Consul General of Panama and the Consul General of Nicaragua proceeded immediately to the residence, were refused entrance, drew their weapons and fired, and there was a minor shootout at the time, drawing the attention of the local law enforcement people. Later, State Department, FBI, and other federal agencies checked it out rather quickly and placed the residence under surveillance. The only reason I was back and forth to the residence was there was some urgent business to be taken care of, one of which was an aircraft that was going to fly from Havana, Mexico City, and up to Los Angeles to pick up some of the key figures in the money-raising aspects for Castro's revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And I had intended to fly back on that aircraft. While spending a little time and assisting the people that were running the new people running the consulate in Monterey Park, I was told of a visit by a North American, as they speak of gringos, North American. I was somewhat annoyed that he'd been allowed inside the residence because he could be an agent provocateur. There had been an armed encounter, and that he should have been run off because I presume that FBI had an OP, an observation point nearby, would be taking pictures of people in and out, and that this particular facility would be susceptible to any type of provocation, and not wanting to be identified myself closely in the federal files or local field offices, because I'd been involved in gun running, I'd been involved in breaking the law, and it was a risky thing. They gave me the man's name, and I thought it was a pseudonym, a cover name right off.
What did they tell you his name was?
Oswald. And in Spanish, it provoked a little chuckle that this was, it's difficult to say. In Mexico, they have a cartoon figure that is Oswald the duck, and in other areas, as in the United States, they have an Oswald the rabbit. So they were somewhat chuckling about Oswald the rabbit, and whether this was his real name. Asked me whether this was a common American name, and I said no. It sounded like a first name, and which would be a cover name, quite often reversing names as pseudonyms. So I went to the waiting room where the people would wait for their visas and all this other stuff. It was off a little foyer off of the main door in the house, and called the young man outside. I wanted him out of the building. When I was talking to him, I decided I'd talk to him just outside the door. I thought it was of prime concern to get him out of the residence before something happened, and then had a little chat with him. And I noticed he stepped away from the front of the house and moved over towards the driveway. So I was alert to that either he might be working for the Somoza people, who were a violent dictatorship, or the Panama people that were somewhat corrupt.
He was in plain clothes.
He was wearing civilian clothes. And I was somewhat fearful of a drive-by type shooting or a snatching. Who knows what's going to happen, or that he would be putting me in position to have my photograph taken from an observation point, which would be a local house that the FBI had approached and said, hey, we need to borrow your patio for a while or something to shoot some pictures of this place, and calm the neighborhood that there's going to be no more shooting, and get volunteers to help out on spotting, because there was no real place to park on that street. It was all private residential area.
What did he tell you?
Well, he wanted to join the revolution, and I explained to him rather quickly, the revolution is over. Well, he said he was interested in, there's going to be other things happening in Latin America. And I thought that rather provocative. He's trying to elicit a statement from somebody on foreign territory that the government of Cuba is going to be causing problems or exporting their revolution to other neighboring countries. And I explained to him in my best quasi-amateur legal manner, no, there is no more activity. The war is over. The revolution is over. They are not seeking volunteers. No, they are not recruiting soldiers. They are not violating United States statutes by recruiting for service in a foreign army. That you could lose your citizenship doing this. And if you had those skills that were needed before, that you weren't there before, would militate against you. But however, if somebody wanted to look for civilian paramilitary type employment in the armed forces as they restructured it, the individual would have to travel to Cuba. but before making that trip, as a tourist only and with no guarantee of remuneration or whatever, he would have to get his resume together and show that he was extremely qualified in the formal armed forces and the insurgent type guerrilla armed forces.
What did he say then?
Well, he went on to explain that he had indeed some background in the military, and that in fact he was on active duty with the Marine Corps, and made a tripping statement that he was at LTA.
What's LTA?
Well, that's the Lighter Than Air facility. It's the blimp base in Santa Ana, California. In fact, that's where he was stationed. But that he would say that to somebody he didn't know what type of background this individual had. He would be talking gibberish. And having been there for a while, let's say more than a week, having taken a cab or conversed with girls or whatever in the neighborhood, he would realize that if you said LTA out of the immediate environs of Tustin or Santa Ana, California, nobody would know what he was talking about. In fact, LTA on the board outside. It was Marine Corps Auxiliary Airfield, Santa Ana, California. And then inside there was main side, and there was parentheses LTA, Lighter Than Air facility, where the hangars are.
Right. So what happened then? Did he leave?
No, he continued promoting his spiel, and in somewhat urgent terms, he wanted to get on the plane that was going to fly to Havana.
He knew that it was coming?
This is what shocked me.
You didn't tell him?
No. That he could be in that house seemingly for the first time, because I think I'd been gone for a full day before. I stopped it right there and told him to wait and step over here on the sidewalk out of the driveway itself, step across the grass onto the sidewalk. Just a second, I got to see somebody. And I went in and I talked to the two Tapanese brothers, and I said, somebody here told this guy there's a plane coming from Havana to pick people up in Los Angeles. And they denied it. In fact, they wanted to go out the door. They considered immediately he was an agent provocateur. They used the term FABE, FBI. Actually, the Cubans, even Castro, was unaware of even the existence of CIA.
Pardon me, the Tapanese brothers, they knew he was there?
They were the leadership, they were the top leadership of Ismail and Rafael Tapanés were the leadership of the 26th of July group in Southern California. They represented all the money raising and arms smuggling efforts for.
But had they seen Oswald?
They had allowed him to come in.
They had allowed him to come in. Are either of them still around today?
I think one of them had defected years before into somewhere in the United States, possibly in the Southern California area. The other one remained in Cuba.